Now we look at Chapter 3 of Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. And this is going to take a little while, so this might be broken up into a few different sections due to the length of this chapter. And I'd like to encourage you to spend extra time on this chapter because there is a strong focus on the planets and what they represent and what they mean. And as we find in astrology, that we need to put things together in pieces. So you need to learn about the planets first and foremost, their qualities, their natures, what they represent. It's only after you have a sense of what the planets actually mean that you can start putting them in signs and then putting them in houses. And it's only after you know what the planets mean, if they're in a Baladi Avashta, or if they're in a Mrita Avashta, or if they're wide awake, or if they're sleeping, or what they're doing throughout the Vargas, the Divisional Charts. So a lot of people want to put everything together all at once before they understand the individual pieces by themselves. So this chapter, Chapter 3, is very important because it goes over the planetary characters and the planetary descriptions. And knowing that, then it makes it so much easier to make sense of the rest of the chart. So learn this first. Take your time with it. And we will also be going through the signs and what they represent, or the Rashis. So Rashis and signs, they are related. And we'll get to that when we make it to that section within this text. But you want to learn those Rashis, the meanings of the Rashis, by themselves too. That way, once you know what the Rashis represent, you will be able to consider, okay, well, if I know what this means, and then I can take the planetary energy and put it in that Rashi, I can see how that mixture is going to come about. This will be very similar to people who know how to cook. They know what it means to mix different flavors and different tastes, because they know what one tastes like, they know what the other tastes like, so when they put them together, they get a sense of what's that going to be. And this is how an astrologer works, essentially. They learn how to understand individual ingredients and then put them together in their right place to get the probabilities or the trends indicated by those combinations. Or we can use the term yoga, to unite, to bring together. Now, with Chapter 3, let's begin. Maitreya said, "O sage, you have affectionately explained about the planetary incarnations. Now kindly detail the characters and dispositions." Parashara responded, "O Brahman, hear the account of the placement of the heavenly bodies. Out of many luminous bodies seen in the sky, some are stars, yet some are planets. Those that have no movement are the Nakshatras." So here we see, he's talking about the sky. What do we see in the sky? There are many luminous things within the sky. A lot of things glow. Some of them are stars, some of them are planets, some of them are moons. Those things which do not move are the Nakshatras, meaning they're not lights that are moving through the sky as the planets do. They're portions of space. And we'll get to this in the next verse here, where it says, "Those are called planets that move through the Nakshatras of the Zodiac." So listen to this carefully. Those are called planets that move through the Nakshatras of the Zodiac. The Zodiac is comprised of 27 sections. The area of the Zodiac is further divided into 12 parts equal to 12 Rashis. The names of the planets commence from the sun. The sign rising is known as the Lagna, also called the ascendant. Based on the Rashi that is rising at the moment of birth and the state of the planets at that time, as they join and depart from each other, the experience of one's life and personal nature can be determined. So here we get, in a nutshell, astrology. And what I've always found fascinating is that in these opening passages of Chapter 3 within this text, the Zodiac is defined as the Nakshatras. The Zodiac is specifically defined as the Nakshatras, which are sidereal sections of space. And it goes on to say that the Zodiac is further divided, these 27 sections which is the zodiac, is further divided into 12 parts equal to 12 rashis. And remember that the term Rashi, we use that for sign. So if we're going to use the word Aries for the first Rashi, then Aries is the sign, but Aries is also the Rashi. Personally, I'd like to get to referring to the Rashis as numbers, the first Rashi, the second Rashi, the third Rashi, and so on, but that's for another time. Parashara goes on to say, the names of the planets commence from the sun. The sign rising is known as the Lagna. So when we talk about the Lagna, this is the ascendant. This is the point that changes on the eastern horizon every 2 hours. We call it the ascendant because it's the ascending portion of the sky. Based on the Rashi that is rising, or we can look at it as though the sign, again, Aries as we know it, or Taurus or Gemini, we can use those names if we like. Based on the Rashi that is rising at the moment of birth, that imprints the person's experience in life. The state of the planets at this same time, they also give indications of a person's karma. And then this important point I love that Parashara goes on to say is, as they join and depart from each other. So listen, as they join and depart from each other. So this is indicating the coming together of planets within the birth chart, or the separating of planets within the birth chart, which is one of the reasons I think aspects such as the Tajika aspects, where we have separation, where a planet is separating from another planet or coming together with another planet, this will show things that are being brought into your life and things that are being separated within your life, which is the basis of Prajna astrology. Which again, if you want to learn more about that, many of you have asked me that recently, and again, I need to refer you to the MP3 download course at AshevilleVedicAstrology.com called The Astrology of Omens, because the birth chart itself and the Prajna chart, we can use, I found, nearly almost all of the same principles for those things. So I find it fascinating. The experiences of one's life and personal nature can be determined in this way. Right, so this is, in a nutshell, the basis of astrology. Now, the astronomy used to determine the position of planets, rashis, etc., are to be understood by the general rules provided by texts specifically dealing with astronomy. And then Parashara goes on to say, I will narrate to you the effects of the planets and the signs. So why do I bring this point up? Because Parashara is not going to teach us astronomy. It would be excellent if we studied astronomy, and personally, I do have it on my agenda to go back and start doing some classes specifically on astronomy, because by understanding the astronomy of what we're looking at within a birth chart, it really helps you understand and unlock what you're seeing, right? Because some things, like for example, Graha Yuddha, or planetary war, some people go by the degree in the birth chart, but there are specific texts that state it's not about the degree, because sometimes you can go look outside in the sky and you can see a planet pretty far away from each other, or two planets far away from each other, but when you look at the birth chart, they're really within a degree of each other. All right. So anyway, point being that astronomy sometimes can really help us understand these things. And then how you choose to interpret it essentially comes down to your experience and how it makes sense to you, because there are numerous astrologers that they'll use one particular kind of interpretive means or understanding, and you'll go talk to another astrologer and they'll use a different one. So they can argue those points back and forth, but typically they will be able to find some reference in a book, an old astrological book, to support their claim or their assertion. So really, in the end, experience and some research will help in that regard. But anyway, just to reiterate what this verse 7 says, the astronomy used to determine the position of planets, rashis, etc., are to be understood by the general rules provided by texts specifically dealing with astronomy. I will narrate to you the effects of the planets and the signs. Learn some astronomy. That's essentially what Parashara is saying. Before you get into this, learn some astronomy. Not just some astronomy. Learn enough astronomy that you understand what the zodiac is, how the sky is divided, how planets move, things of this nature. Now verses 8 and 9 of chapter 3. The position of the planets at any time need to be taken in reference to Drikganit, also known as the precise calculation of stellar positions. So here we have another reference to precise calculation of stellar positions. So Parashara is reaffirming we need to understand astronomy. One also considers Rashi durations related to the place at birth. So we need to be able to understand that the place that we are born has an impact on how the chart plays itself out. These also determine the ascending Rashi at birth, or the ascendant, the sign rising at birth. Now I will tell you about the castes, descriptions, and dispositions of the planets. Okay, so we've had a little introduction to what astrology is. We've also had it told to us that we really need to understand some astronomy. Once we get that under our belt, or once we've worked that out, now Parashara goes on to talk about the planets specifically. Now verse 10 deals with the planetary names. The names of the 9 planets are Surya, for the sun, Soma, for the moon, Kuja, for Mars, Buddha, for Mercury, Guru, for Jupiter, Shukra, for Venus, Shani, for Saturn, and Rahu and Ketu, for the nodes of the moon. These planets may also be known by other names. In fact, the planets have numerous names. These are the ones that I personally use to refer to the planets. The gentle and cruel planets. This is verse 11. Many of you probably know the gentle and cruel planets as malefic and benefic. And if you've ever typed in Word or tried to write on your computer these words, you'll see that they don't actually show up as words. So you kind of have to add them to your dictionary. But this word gentle and cruel, why do we choose this? Well, this was brought to my attention by Ernst Wilhelm, because the term that is used for malefic and benefic is krura and salmya. So krura means cruel, salmya means gentle. So I'm going to do my best. I've said I was going to do this in the past, so I'm going to make a new resolution to do this. Do my best to refer to the planets as gentle and cruel in reference to how they are described in this text. So among the planets, Surya, the sun, Shani, Saturn, Kuja, Mars, the decreasing moon, or Soma, the waning moon, Rahu and Ketu are considered to be cruel planets. The rest are gentle. Buddha, however, will act cruel if he is joined in the same sign with a cruel planet. So if you have Mercury in the same sign with Saturn, he acts cruel. If you have Mercury in the same sign with Jupiter, he acts gentle. Now if you have 2 planets in the same sign with Mercury, say you've got Jupiter and Saturn with Mercury, whatever planet he's closest to by degree, that will determine how he acts. So if we have Jupiter at 10 degrees, and we have Saturn at 20 degrees, and Mercury is at 12 degrees, which would put him closer to Jupiter, he will act more like a gentle planet. Some even say that the waning moon will act gentle if associated with gentle planets. And I found that to be true. Now, this brings up a very good point. We've just discussed cruel and gentle planets. Now, you have to know what these cruel and gentle planets are. And you might try to utilize this information immediately. But this will make more sense once we get to the section dealing with, for example, Ishta and Kashta. All right, so you need to know that they're cruel and gentle. And then when we get to Ishta and Kashta, you can insert this information into the formula for Ishta and Kashta. And then you will know why we use these terms, cruel and gentle. All right, so again, this is just to reiterate the point that when it comes to learning astrology, you're going to learn a whole bunch of little different pieces at once. And you're going to want to put them all together, but if you try to put them all together before you know what all of them are, you just get a mess. But if you can be patient, and you can learn cruel and gentle planets, and then wait, and then once we get to Ishta and Kashta, you can figure out, what does that mean? What are we talking about here? And then you can say, oh, okay, I can see how these two fit together. So essentially, we're learning a whole bunch of different variables. And then, once we know the variables, we can learn how to put them together. This is what's going to make a person a good astrologer versus someone who does cookbook astrology, where they just pick up a text and say, oh, the third lord is in the fourth house, therefore it means this. Well, you might be right on some of that, but you'll be a heck of a lot more right if you know how to determine what does it mean to have a gentle planet doing this, or what does it mean that that gentle planet has high Ishta and low Kashta. What does it mean that that planet is in Baladi of Ashta? Things of this nature. So again, you can see all these different pieces, but to be a good astrologer, we need to learn the pieces by themselves first. Now, planetary government. This tells us in general, in the bigger picture of things, what does each planet rule over? Like, what is it representative of? So Surya, or the sun, is the soul of all beings. Not green beans, but beings. Soma is the mind, or the moon is the mind. Mars, or Kuja, is one's strength of will and character. Buddha is the speech giver. Those things that we're going to talk about, that also we're going to think about, because we usually talk about what we think about. Guru, or Jupiter, confers knowledge and happiness. Shukra, or Venus, governs potency. While Shani, or Saturn, is our grief, our misery, and our responsibilities. So this is very telling. If we want to see what is the general soul of someone, we look at the state of the sun within their birth chart. If we want to know what is their mind like, because you can look at someone's ascendant, which will be kind of how they project themselves to the world, but you're not really getting a sense of their mind. They can project themselves as though they're tough and they're strong, but maybe their moon is in Cancer, or maybe their moon is in a watery sign, so their mind is actually more sensitive. So the influences to the moon show us the mind. Kuja is one's strength of will and character, or Mars is one's strength of will or character. I've gone over this in previous videos, but Mars shows us what are our ideals that we fight for, and is our character honorable? And so if we can look at the state of Mars, we can understand this about a person. Buddha is the speech giver, the things we like to talk about, the things we're interested in, our capacity to communicate. Guru confers knowledge and happiness. Jupiter confers knowledge and happiness. We look to the state of Jupiter to see, is this a knowledgeable person? Do they have capacity to be happy? Shukra governs potency, often related to the sexual fluids and the capacity to pass on our DNA, but it's also our capacity to do things of lasting value within the world. That's our potency. If we're not very potent, well, nothing good is going to come from our actions, our activities. While Shani is our grief, Saturn is our grief, our responsibilities, and our misery. So wherever Saturn's placed, that's going to show where we have more responsibilities, where we might meet with grief. It also shows the state of our capacity to handle that. All right. The planetary cabinet. Surya and Soma, or the sun and moon, are of royal status. They are the king and the queen, essentially. Mars is the chief of the army. Mercury is the prince and heir. Jupiter and Shukra, or Venus, so Jupiter and Venus serve as ministers and counselors. Shani, or Saturn, is the servant, and Rahu and Ketu are the army of the planetary cabinet. Now this is just rich with information that you can use. Surya and Soma of royal status. It's the soul and the mind. Remember? That shows us how we direct ourselves within the world. So if you want to know who is ruling this person, if we want to look at it like a different entity almost, we can see what is the nature of the direction of this individual. We look at the sun and the moon. If we want to know how capable is one of following the orders of their soul and of their mind, well, we look at not Mercury. We look at Mars. If we want to know who is the one that almost benefits or experiences this, because remember, Mercury also deals with the senses. That would be the prince and heir, which would be Mercury. Jupiter and Venus, these are the gurus, the advisors. Jupiter is called guru. Guru and Shukra, Jupiter and Venus, are the ministers, advisors, and counselors. So they are the ones that give information to the court to say, look, if you want to experience happiness, follow this, Jupiter. If you want to make choices that lead to higher fulfillment, follow this, Venus. Shani is the servant. He's the one that does the hard work. He's the one that, in a sense, you might consider to be the one that carries out the mission or the orders, the work. He's the worker. Rahu and Ketu are the army of the planetary cabinet. Rahu and Ketu, it's a deep concept all by itself, but they kind of show us where we're coming from past lifetimes and how we're transposing that, or how we are translating that into our current life situation. So they are the army of the planetary cabinet. They are representative of the experiences that we have to go through to evolve. And each planet contributes a part of their skill sets, a part of their nature to help us navigate our lives. And so I personally like to see the planets as powers of the self. It's helpful to look at them as unique individuals, and they are, just like we're a unique individual, but ultimately it's just a facet of the one being, the one united consciousness. So I'd like to encourage you to think about the planets as though they are powers of the self. And so if you want to know how a certain power of yourself is working, we would look at the appropriate planet. Okay, so we'll go ahead and pause here for today. I think this will have given you enough to think about for now. I would like to encourage you to go back and re-listen to this and write down what has been said. Actually take notes, write out exactly what I have said, and make your own book of notes on Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra for you to refer to. And this will allow you to learn the information with greater accuracy, and allow you to internalize it with greater clarity. And next time we'll move on with the planetary complexions, the deities, the gender, and so on. There's quite a bit more in this chapter. In fact, we'll be going over the elements, the castes, the gunas, the nature of each planet individually, the 7 layers of the body, where the planets reside, planetary periods and tastes. And I do believe we'll also begin into planetary friendships and even the upagrahas, or the shadow planets. But again, we need to take it slowly and carefully. Okay, so we'll be in touch soon. Thanks.